IELTS Writing Task 1, Lesson 6, Two Different Charts. I have already done a lesson about 4 pie charts. We saw these charts comparing the UK and New Zealand in 2 different years. For that task we compared the 4 charts together, but today's lesson is about a different type of question. Today we are not looking at this kind of question where you see 2 similar charts. The only difference here is the year, so we can compare these charts together. Today we are looking at this kind of question where you have 2 completely different charts, for example a bar chart and a pie chart, or this kind of question, a line graph and a pie chart, or this kind of question, a line graph and a table. These are questions with 2 different charts which you can't compare together. As usual, your job is to select, describe and compare the key numbers in the charts, but you don't need to compare the 2 charts together. You can describe them separately. First, look for one main feature in each chart. That will be for your summary or overview paragraph. You'll do 2 sentences, one about each chart. Next, describe specific numbers for each chart separately. So you'll do a separate paragraph in your details paragraphs, paragraph 3 about the first chart and paragraph 4 about the second chart. So let's look at our 2 chart question for today's lesson. Here's the question. You can see that there's a bar chart on the left and a pie chart on the right. Let's read the question at the top together. The bar chart below shows the numbers of men and women attending various evening courses at an adult education centre in the year 2009. The pie chart gives information about the ages of these course participants. So there's 2 sentences in that question. The first sentence is about the bar chart, talking about numbers of men and women at these evening courses, and the pie chart is about the ages of these people at the evening courses. So very different information. Looking at the bar chart, you can see there's men and women and it's numbers of people on those 4 different courses. The pie chart doesn't show men and women and it doesn't show the 4 courses. It only shows the ages, different age groups. So very different. We have to describe these 2 charts separately. Let's do our normal 4 paragraph structure: introduction, overview and 2 paragraphs of details. We'll start with the introduction, of course. Paraphrase the question. So we take the question again and we go through it section by section, changing what we can. We'll start then with the bar chart below shows, and I've changed that simply to the bar chart compares. Then the numbers of men and women, the numbers of males and females. Up to now, very small changes, but that's fine. Attending various evening courses at an adult education centre. I've put who took 4 different evening classes. So instead of attending, I've put who took, and I've missed the part about adult education centre. We don't really need that. And I've put evening classes instead of courses. In the year 2009, in 2009. Notice there's a full stop there in the question, but I've put a comma. So instead of 2 separate sentences, I'm going to continue with the same sentence. So I need a connecting word. I'm going to use and. The pie chart gives information about, and the pie chart shows. Then finally, the ages of these course participants. I've put the age profile of these attendees. So that's a nice difference at the end. Instead of ages, I've put age profile, and instead of participants, the word attendees is good. That's the full introduction finished then. The bar chart compares the numbers of males and females who took 4 different evening classes in 2009, and the pie chart shows the age profile of these attendees. On to the overview now. 2 sentences, 2 main points, and as I said earlier, we just need 1 sentence for each chart. So let's look at the charts again. We'll start with the bar chart and choose a main point there. I've noticed these 3 bars are definitely higher for women, so I'll say something about that in general. And then for the pie chart, I've noticed obviously that this is the highest figure for these 50s or over. So those are the two things I'm going to choose. Let's see how I wrote that in my overview. First sentence, it is clear that significantly more women than men attended evening classes at the Education Centre. We can also see that evening courses were much more popular among older adults. As usual in my overview, I haven't put any numbers. I've been very general. So the figures were higher for women than for men, and the figures were higher for older adults. That's all very general. Now we can move on to the details. Details paragraphs 3 and 4. We'll start with paragraph 3 and decide what to put in this paragraph by looking at the charts again. So we're going to start with this chart, of course, for paragraph 3 only. And the things that I want to talk about, you can't choose everything. I'm going to choose to talk about those higher figures for women. I'll do a comparison for language courses because that's the highest overall, the most popular course overall. And I'm going to mention painting as well because they're similar figures and we've got the highest male figure there. And finally, I'll move on to this figure because it's the only course, sculpture course, is the only one where the figure for men is higher than for women. Let's go back to the paragraph that I'm writing then. And I'm starting with this phrase, according to the bar chart. This shows the reader, the examiner, that I'm talking only about the bar chart in this paragraph. According to the bar chart, drama, painting and language courses all attracted more women than men to the Education Centre in 2009. So I've chosen those 3 courses that were more popular for women than men. Then moving on to get some figures in here. Language classes had the highest number of participants overall, with 40 female and 20 male students. There's a comma at the end, so I'm carrying on. While painting was a popular choice among both genders, attracting 30 female and 25 male attendees. Last sentence. The only course with a higher number of males was sculpture, but this course was taken by a mere 15 people in total. Let's analyse that paragraph a little bit, see what I've put in there. First, notice it's all about the bar chart. As I said, I've introduced that at the beginning by saying according to the bar chart. Then I've mentioned drama, painting, language and sculpture. All 4 courses are mentioned. Then more women than men, both genders. I've mentioned and compared both genders, men and women. That's important, of course. It's all about comparing. And let's look at the numbers I've used. 40 female and 20 male, 30 female and 25 male, and 15 people in total. So there's 5 different numbers mentioned there. That's enough for one paragraph. One more thing to point out is about adding numbers on the end of sentences. Notice I've used with after a comma to add the numbers. We had the sentence, language classes had the highest number of participants overall. That's a complete sentence, but then if I want to add the actual numbers, I can put comma with 40 female and 20 male students. And I've also done a similar thing with the word attracting after a comma. So we had the sentence, just looking at the line above, starting painting. Painting was a popular choice among both genders, attracting 30 female and 25 male attendees. So using a comma and with, or in this case you can do it with a verb as well, attracting, is a good way of adding the numbers onto the end of a sentence. Let's go to paragraph 4 now and do the same thing. We'll choose from the chart, this chart of course, which information is going to go in the paragraph. I'm always thinking about just 3 sentences as well, remember. Well, I'm going to start with those 2 numbers for the older age groups. I'm going to try and put those together and give those numbers. And then I'll move on to comparing that with the younger age groups, aged under 20 and 20 to 29. I should be able to write about those 4 things in just 3 sentences. Here's what I've written. Looking at the age profile pie chart, very similar to what I did in paragraph 3, we're telling the examiner what this paragraph is about. So this is clearly about the pie chart only now. We can see that the majority of people attending evening lessons were over 40 years of age. So over 40 means the last two age groups. There was 40 to 49 and 50 and over, so I've grouped them together. Now I'm going to explain that in more detail. To be precise, 42% of them were aged 50 or more, and 26% were aged between 40 and 49. So that's a nice way to do those first two sentences. We had a general idea of all the age groups over 40 in sentence 1, and then I started with this phrase "to be precise" in sentence 2. I think that was a nice way of doing it, and we've got the figures in there. Last sentence, and then the paragraph is finished. Younger adults were in the minority, with only 11% of students aged 20 to 29 and only 5% aged under 20. Let's quickly analyse this paragraph. Again, we can see numbers, 4 different numbers in one paragraph. So I think it was 5 numbers in paragraph 3, meaning that I've included 9 specific numbers in this report overall. I've mentioned most of the ages over 40 years. That was grouping together the next two groups that you can see underlined there, 50 or more and between 40 and 49, and I mentioned the age groups 20 to 29 and under 20. I think there was one age group only, the 30 to 39, that I missed, but you don't need to include everything. You have to select, remember. Other good bits of vocabulary in this paragraph. It's nice to talk about the majority and the minority. Were in the minority is a good phrase. And that phrase "to be precise" that I used was a nice one. And also, again, just as in paragraph 3, we had a number on the end of a sentence using comma with. If you look at the beginning of that sentence, starting with the word younger adults were in the minority. You could stop the sentence there, it's a full sentence. But if you want to add the number on the end, comma with, only 11% of students aged 20 to 29 and only 5% aged under 20. And that's paragraph 4 finished, and the whole essay, the whole report is finished because we have no conclusion as usual. Let's analyse the vocabulary, and we usually analyse paraphrasing, comparing language, and language for describing changes. But there's no language for describing changes in this report today because there are no changes in years. There's nothing to compare increase or decrease when the time doesn't change. So we'll just look at the paraphrasing and the comparing language in those two charts. Starting with attending courses, that was from the question, and I used who took classes. I also wrote about participants, attendees and students, and males and females instead of men and women. Courses attracted more women. Instead of saying women attended courses, the courses attracted women. I've changed the order around and used the verb attracted. A popular choice among both genders. Instead of men and women or males and females, both genders is a good phrase. And a popular choice among them. Significantly more, higher, highest, typical comparing language. Had the highest number, comma, with. What I was saying in those two paragraphs about adding the number on the end of a sentence using comma with. I did that a few times. Was taken by a mere 15 people. A mere means only. It's a nice alternative to saying only 15 people. According to the bar chart and looking at the age profile pie chart, remember at the start of those two paragraphs I was telling the examiner what this paragraph is about. The majority of people and were in the minority. We're talking about the different age groups, using the majority for the biggest figure and in the minority for the smaller figures. And finally, we use that phrase "to be precise," when I talked a bit in general about people over 40 and then went more precise and gave the figures for 40 to 49 and 50 and over. So that was the good vocabulary that I think the examiner would notice. And that's the end of this lesson about two different charts. If you print the worksheet, watch the lesson again and analyse each sentence carefully, I'm sure you'll find it even more useful and you'll understand everything better. The worksheet next to this lesson contains the full report as well as some questions to get you looking at the essay more carefully. In the next lesson, we'll look at a process diagram question, a diagram with no numbers that shows a process. So this is quite different from the questions that we've done up to now.